Hello and welcome to Professor Pincushion. I'm Tova and today I'm going to show you one way to easily hem a pair of jeans. For those of us that are short, a very common issue is having jeans that are always too long. The great thing about this technique is that you're keeping the original hemline so that the bottom of the jeans will still look professional and no one will be the wiser. Stop folding the bottom of your pants and learn how to hem jeans now. Let's go ahead and get started. Typically what most of us do when we're hemming a pair of pants is you're taking it up from the bottom and creating a new hem. With this technique, by preserving this bottom part of the pants and you're actually shorting it above it, you're getting to keep the distressed look of the bottom of the jeans. Because if I just fold this up and then I sew it, even if I match this thread color, you're not going to get the same look as the distress that we have going on down here. So this is why you would like to do it this way. It just looks more professional. Typically this works best for jeans that have more of a straighter leg. It doesn't really work if something is really flared out at the bottom like a bell bottom. You're going to want to put on your jeans and you're going to fold up the bottom until you get the length that you want and just lightly pin it in place. Just put in a couple of pins. I would also, after you pin it up, sit down and make sure it's still a length that you like and maybe try on the shoes that you normally wear with them so you're making sure that you're getting the correct length. Once you have it folded up for the distance that you want it, you're going to measure it from the base here. So you're not including the top of the hem here, you're doing it on the inside folded part. You're going to measure it. So in my case, I'm doing 2 inches and I'm going to take that number and I'm going to divide it in half. So I'm bringing it down to 1 inch. Then I'm going to refold this until I get the 1 inch, again from this point to this point. So once I get that, and what I like to typically do is I pin the side seams first, so this side seam, so I can make sure that this folded edge matches up with this folded edge. I do the same thing over here on the inside seam, making sure that matches up. Then I do the middle, and then I just kind of break it down. So I do the sides, the middle of that, and I do the same thing for the back of the leg as well. Once you have it pinned, go ahead and give it a good press down here so you can end up with a good, nice, crisp edge. Next, you're going to take it to your sewing machine, and you're going to stitch right along this bottom hemline area. So you want to get as close to the fold without going into the fold. So in this particular case, I'm staying on this lighter side, and make sure that you don't just leave it flat like this as you're stitching it, because we don't want to accidentally sew our pant leg closed. So if you have the platform where you can actually slip this over it, that's the best way to do it. You're going to want to use a zipper foot for this, and everybody's zipper feet look different. So if you have a narrow zipper foot, you want to use that one. This is what mine looks like. So you can see it's just a foot on one side and then the needle's on this edge here. So it makes it a little bit more challenging for me, but I'll show you how I do it. Let me just put this on. So if you can remove your accessory box and then slip the pant leg onto the free arm here, you're going to want to stitch right next to this folded edge right here, but I really don't want my foot to be riding on top of the hem right here. It just makes it a little bit harder. Ideally you want it here, but for me, I'm sewing way too far from this folded edge. So if you have a really narrow foot and your needle's more on this side of the foot, then that's great, you can do it this way. In my situation, I'm going to be coming on the opposite side, sewing this way, so that way my needle can get really close to that folded edge there. You can see the edge of my foot is right on the edge of the hem. But with this way, you need to make sure that you're not accidentally sewing your pant leg together. So if we were to flip this over, you can see I'm just folding this bottom part out of the way. As I'm going along, I just have to keep rotating it to make sure that that's not getting caught. I switched to a denim needle to sew this. And I'm just doing a regular straight stitch. Now if you're doing this for a kid that you'll eventually want to let out again, or you just want to test the length, so you want to try it on, just do this in a basting stitch. But if you're doing a more permanent thing, then you can just do a regular length straight stitch. After you stitch it, if you want to try it on your jeans, go ahead. You just need to flip them out like this, and then you can go ahead and try them on. Now you can just leave it like this if you want to, but if you want to kind of trim off some of the excess, especially if you actually hemmed it up quite a bit, then I'm going to show you what to do next. So you're deciding, okay, I really like this length, I want it to be permanent. I'm going to grab my sewing gauge again and put it at the 1/2 inch mark, and then measure from this bottom folded edge again, the 1/2 inch, and mark it with my fabric marker all the way around the pant leg. Take your scissors and cut along your marked line. Switch your stitch on your sewing machine to an overcast stitch or a zigzag stitch, because now we're going to finish the raw edge that we just created when we cut off the excess fabric. Do this stitch along the top edge here. So I'm doing kind of a big zigzag stitch. And this is going to help prevent our seam here from fraying too much. Now you can take all this, you can flip it to the inside of the pants, and then I would press this bottom part so it stays nice and flat. Now at this point you could just leave your jeans like this and have it be finished, but sometimes when you're putting on your pants, as your foot comes through this bottom edge, this will flip out and then you'll have to keep adjusting it. So in order to prevent that, there's a few things you can do. On the side seam and inside seam here, you can do some machine stitches. You can just go maybe 1/2 inch, and that's going to attach this at the sides, and that should keep it in place. Or what you can do is do a top stitch. So if we move this like this, you can actually see my folded edge now with my seam. If you're looking at it on top, you're not really going to notice it, but if you look at it like this, you can really see that. So you would just stitch right along that folded edge there just to hold it into place, and you do that all the way around. If you're doing a top stitch or you're doing the stitch on the side seam, try to match the thread color best you can to your denim. That way it's not going to stand out as much, but you'll definitely still see it, especially if you do the top stitch, which is what I'm doing right now. So I'm sewing just on the other side of this fold line here, and that's going to keep all that seam allowance in place on the inside of the leg. So this is the most noticeable way than just sewing on the side a couple of stitches, but it can also be a fashion detail too. Another option, what you can do is if you don't want something as noticeable as a top stitch, you can go ahead and do a few hand tacking stitches at the side seam and inside seam. And this is especially a good idea if you did not trim this, because you plan on letting the pants out more later on down the line. So to help keep your folded edge on the inside of the pants, especially when you're trying to put the pants on. So I just have some needle and thread here, and I'm only working in the seam allowance area. This is never going to show on the right side of the pants. So I'm going to grab a little bit of my raw edge, or if you have a folded edge here, I'm going right on the edge, and I have a knot at the end of my thread, and then I'm going to grab a little bit of the seam allowance underneath it. And again, I'm just grabbing a little bit of fabric on the seam allowance. I'm not going through to the rest of the pants. Pull that through, and then I'm going to grab a little bit more of this top edge and then go back to the bottom part here. And you'll probably only do a couple of stitches because this area is not very big. And again, I'm doing it at the inside seam, but I would also do this at the side seam as well, just so you have 2 points where it's kind of holding this in place. So after I do a few stitches, I can just grab a little bit of fabric here, so I create a thread loop, and then I go through the thread loop with my needle, and that will create a knot. This pant leg over here, I haven't touched it yet. This is the one that I just altered. So if you're just looking from it at afar, you're not really going to notice any difference, and it's going to look perfectly normal. Only when you look at it close up, you might see a slight fold here, but it still looks pretty nice. So this one here, I just tacked it at the side seam and inside seam. And then I'm going to show you another example I did. So for this one, I actually did a top stitch. So I have my original stitch, which is dark, so it's hard to see, and then I did a top stitch above it just to hold that folded edge in place. And it's really up to you on what you want the bottom of your jeans to look like. New tutorials are released weekly, so please subscribe to be notified of the next release. Make sure to check out our other videos and visit ProfessorPincushion.com to view our complete library with well over 200 sewing video tutorials, including our exclusive premium content. Our premium membership is only $5 a month for unlimited access and only available at ProfessorPincushion.com. Also, don't forget to download our mobile app for videos on the go. Thanks for watching.